haven't got any more of these spinning balls and cubes and things. There's a hint of reality there, but I suspect that's making it more and more difficult. I mean, presumably with that lovely fish, you had to feed the dimensions of it into the computer in the same way that I did with this very simple starship.
Well, yeah, but the fish is a smooth, curved shape.
Yeah.
And although we're building it, the same elements, these flat, planar polygons, we've actually got thousands of them there, because they make up the smooth, curved surface. It's made of lots and lots of polygons.
I couldn't see any polygons in a fish.
It's just because they're very, very small, that's all. Yeah. But, I mean, if we did it with the graph paper, we'd be there all night.
Yeah.
We'd hardly get the fin in. So what we actually do is we have a thing called a three-dimensional digitizer. And it's a very clever device. It's got a little cursor, a little pen, and it'll tell you exactly where the pen is. So what we're able to do is to just feed the pen over the surface of the object, and the shape of it gets read straight into the computer. Marvellous.
You're really minimising the donkey work.
It saves hours and hours of work.
OK, well, let's have a look at what that work was in aid of and look at the final animation.
If you splash out on your access card 1 month, there's a choice of ways to pay it back. If you want to pay drop by drop, just pay the minimum amount every month. If your cash level's a little higher, you could let more flow out and pay it off quicker. And if you've plenty of cash, you could wipe it all clean all in one go.
Oscar, what strikes you about that? A very realistic piece of animation.
Yes, a very beautiful piece of animation, actually. It's curious because in, say, the last 20 years, people are striving for realism in every image they try to portray. I mean, artists using airbrush, computer animators. I mean, it's in contradiction to what happened from the beginning of the century when everybody tried to destroy and distort images, you know?
And in a way, it's in contradiction to what you do as a classical animator,
No, I mean,
isn't it?
it's a different way to approach a vision of reality, but effectively speaking, I'm surprised about the idea of going into more realism.
More and more realism.
Yeah, yeah.
In their search for greater realism, computer animators are having to study the effects of light and shade. The way light falls on an object can change its appearance dramatically. For example, it's not too easy to see what this is with the present lighting. But if this light is turned off and another one turned on, now you can see straight away, yes, it's a cube with a sphere on top. It takes on a solid feel just through good lighting. And changing the lighting yet again gives another effect. Now, it's possible to have a computer version of the same thing. This sphere has been simplified by using lots of different polygons. That's to make the calculations easier. And this time, of course, it's the software which allows you to alter the way that light falls on it. For example, at the moment, the light on this object is from the bottom left. So the polygons making up the shape are brighter at the bottom left where the light falls than they are up there in the shadows. But I can change all that. I just click onto this here and select that light bulb icon. Now, here I've got 3 different views of the same object. That's 1, 2, 3, those squares there represent the object, and these are the bulbs, and I can move them about just by grabbing them and pulling them across. I'll pop that one up there, perhaps. You'll see that that one moved as well, because it's actually the same bulb viewed from a different angle, and but I'll move that one. I'll pop that into that corner, and I'm happy with that, so I click on OK. Now, a few moments pause while it does all the recalculations, and there, it's happy, it's done them. I can now ask for the super view and see it in action. Yes, there it is. Straight away you can see that it's now lit from the top right. Now, if you compare that with the original, you can see how the brightness of every single polygon has been recalculated. Now, on this sphere, the polygons are quite large, but as Chris was saying earlier, with smaller polygons, and of course with more gradations of shading, a much more realistic effect could be achieved. Ultimately, of course, every dot on the screen, every pixel, could be individually calculated. But that would take more computer power, smarter software, and a great deal more time.
And even more computer intensive if you want to use shiny surfaces and hundreds of reflections. Chris, tremendous. How did you create that effect? The spoons look so shiny.
Well, the problem that we had in this case was to make the spoons, which are computer simulated, appear to be in the kitchen, which is in fact real. It's a live action shoot. So the trick that we used was to take some photographs, 6 photographs from each of the relative positions of where the spoons were going to be.
So you've got like a box, in
That's
fact.
right.
Yeah.
We use those to make a box, and then we're able to calculate which bit of the box is reflecting in each spoon. That means that we haven't got to build all the kitchen to get the reflections on the spoon. So it's saving a lot of time there.
And a lot of money, presumably.
But it fools the eye.
Yeah. Well, let's see that used to really great effect in a clip from a piece called Red's Dream, which is from Pixel USA.
Very nice, though. Now, it's fairly straightforward to get a computer image of an old baked bean tin like this. In fact, there is one. But if this cylinder were to be wrapped in a busy fabric, say this tartan, then the effect of that wrapping around is a bit more difficult to achieve. Some common computer painting packages can give you a textured effect. This one will, believe it or not, even allow you to paint with tartan paint, which I think is right. There we are. Fills it in. But as it starts to cover that tin, you see that the effect isn't really what we were after. It's a very two-dimensional effect, and no longer does it have any feeling of depth to it. The software would obviously need to take the flat pattern and, if you like, wrap it round the solid shape. Now, that technique is known as texture mapping. It's a lot more difficult.
Well, let's have a look now at the sort of textures on show at Imaginer. This one entered by the Moving Picture Company. Now, are all these surfaces we're seeing here texture mapped?
Yes, certainly on the top of the islands, that's a texture map there. But one interesting thing is that the mountains are probably texture mapped, but they're mapped very much like the one that we were using on the BBC molecule. It's quite amazing. The same thing will carry the eye in different situations.
Now where are we?
Well, now we're out in a motion control shoot, I think. We just dropped that picture back using Mirage.
Is there anything real there? Oh no, we've lost it already.
No. Now you've got a great mixture of techniques used.
One illusion after another, in
There's
fact.
a lot of motion control. It's brilliantly put together.
Some wonderful examples there of how a computer can hold a 3D model of what an object looks like. But it can also hold a model of how an object behaves. Well, that is, if it behaves in a predictable way. For example, this ball, if dropped, will normally bounce about that high. And on the table, when it hits the table, it would squash infinitesimally, perhaps about that much. So instead of creating the bouncing ball in the way that Chris did earlier, you could program in the dynamics of a ball. That is, the laws of physics. You could start it off at a set height and then just let go. And of course, it needn't be as simple as a bouncing ball.
Oscar, I don't know about you, I love the strings and the dynamics were fantastic in the pictures, but I missed the natural sound.
Yes, of course. I mean, this is an audiovisual medium, so sound effects are, effectively speaking, 80% of the effect.
Well, I happen to agree, and in fact, we've had a bit of fun, and we've added some effects all of our own.
And not a scratch on it. Once you start to think about creating rules for the way things behave, well, you could say that the sky's the limit. One of the more exciting new effects to come out of this year's computer animations reproduces the natural beauty of flocks of birds. Naturally enough, this effect is called flocking, and again, it's based on a series of simple rules. Craig Reynolds at Symbolics took a look at the problem from the individual bird's point of view. The path of each bird is worked out using rules like this. Collision avoidance, that is, don't bump into your mates. Velocity matching, that is, keep roughly the same speed or roughly the same direction as all the others. And flock centering, which means in plain English, don't get left behind. The further away a bird gets, the stronger is the urge to catch up. Those simple rules are then line tested. Now, although these are only triangles, it's clear straight away that that overall flocking effect really does work. And here you can see one of those triangles has got lost. Now, the computer spontaneously created that one. And here is the finished film, which is absolutely stunning.
Oscar, as somebody whose work is always story-led, how do you rate that as a piece of storytelling?
I must admit, it doesn't do too much to me. It's not my cup of tea. I appreciate it beautifully to look at, but I feel disturbed by the look of the characters. I mean, they don't transmit anything to me.
That's fair comment. I think the really exciting thing about this piece is where it's leading. The potential thing that we're looking at here is a time where, Oscar will be able to talk to the computer. He'll be able to say, make me a scene like that, because the computer will understand the world. It'll know what he means by certain sorts of images, and he'll be able to direct the film like a director can direct actors and scenes right now.
So then I tell the character to smile, and
then they'll smile, and you've got to say, don't smile like that.
And then animators will be unleashed from this sort of fascination with the technology for its own sake.
That's right. It'll be technologically transparent.
Date will that happen on?
Well, soon. I make you no promises.
Okay.
Meanwhile, back to 1988 and Imagina. Everybody there has been waiting in anticipation from the latest from that master storyteller, Walt Disney. It's a short, and it's their first film created entirely by computer animation. Nice characterisation, we all rate that. And of course, everybody's been looking forward to the latest film from John Lasseter, the creator of that lamp animation we saw earlier. Oscar, why is John Lasseter so good?
Oh, I just suppose because he's trying to make things simple and trying to make them easy to understand for all of us. And it's all vaudeville act. He's trying to make us cry, he's trying to make us smile, you know, the old feelings. And I think in technical terms, he does it with a transparent technique, not showing off. It's just simply making a funny piece of business in a very beautiful technical way.
Yes, well, that brings us on to that animation. I think this one is set to win the overall prize this year. It's that unicycle one that you saw earlier. It's John Lasseter's Red Dream. Lovely. What we've seen over and over again in this programme is that provided you can analyse a problem mathematically, then given time and energy, you can get a computer to solve it for you, even if it appears to be a totally creative process. Now, a good cartoonist like Oscar over there could do a caricature of me very simply. He'd say big nose, big ears, and he'd come up with something like this, which he scribbled on the back of my script earlier on. Yes, more than a touch of the Prince Charles about that, I detect. Now, that talent might seem to defy analysis, to be something that only a human being could do. But what Oscar was doing was mentally comparing my face with the average face and exaggerating any differences. Well, here I've got a program that, believe it or not, does exactly that, or begins to explore it anyway. This is a line drawing of me, and it's taken from this photo. Now, that's not acne or bullet holes, that's just the dots with which we put the data in. Now, the computer will compare my measurements with the measurements for the average face, this one here. And where it finds differences, it will exaggerate them. Let's start it off. And it's starting to multiply those differences out. And I think, yes, that's just about far enough. Stop. Oh dear. Oh well, trouble with computers is they never know when to stop, do they? Of course, that was only a bit of fun, but it was based on some serious work by Susan Brennan at MIT. Animators are starting to turn their attention to modelling the human face, to analysing expressions and muscular movement. For instance, this is a chart from Keith Waters of Middlesex Polytechnic. If you apply his principles to a recognisably human face, that of the actor Robert Powell, you get something like this. Oscar just said he could use that. Well, that's it for this special edition of Microfile. Hope you've enjoyed it.
It just remains for me to thank our guests, Oscar Brillo and Chris Briscoe. And we'll leave you with a look at one of our favourite animations of the last year. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.